Podcasting since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts radio network. kingofpodcasts.com.
A lowly film accountant funnels millions of dollars so that he can be a sugar daddy via Ponzi scheme to spend money on porn stars and Vegas vacations.
We're all a little depraved and debaucherous. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Thanks for joining me, King of Podcasts, here with you with another episode of Depraved and Debaucherous. Couple of things of housekeeping I want to give before we get things started. I recorded an interview that I said I was going to go ahead and preview for all of you out here, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I want to go and probably just push it out later this week. My interview with Tim Ash, and he wrote a very great book that I wanted to go ahead and let people know about. Like I said, it's one of the most important dating books you could ever read. And the book, just so you know, if you want to look for it right now, is called Primal Dating, The Unflinching Evolutionary Psychology Guide to Modern Relationships. It's an unflinching guide for men based on evolutionary psychology. This is also for men and women. And it shows how to challenge the modern dating narratives that we all have dealt with right now. For men to focus on self-improvement and to become proven winners in the dating market. This is not your alpha male book. This is not pickup artists. This is not some overly psychology. It's not rational male. It's not men are from Mars, women are from Venus. That's all bullshit compared to this book. This book is everything. And I'm telling you, I have read hundreds of books on dating, psychology, manipulation, narcissism, everything. Which is why I am so well read to do this podcast. But I'm telling you, Tim has done the work. This book is out there now, and you're going to get a preview of what this book entails because I put it down into a nice, concise 30-minute format because that's all I think you need to know that you need to get out of the interview so that you will be absolutely running and dashing to Amazon or wherever you get your books, ebook, whatever it is, you will get your hands on this book because you need to do that. And I hope you get a chance to go ahead and check out the interview. I will be putting it out a little bit later on this week as a bonus episode of Depraved and Debaucherous, so look for that. But I was going to think about putting it out today. But then this story came across before I even decided to go ahead and record with Tim. That was mind-blowing. I mean, I couldn't even believe this is true, but I just finally got onto the story because a grand jury investigation just closed on this and indictments have been filed. So we're going to get into it right now. Let me give you the whole story on it. Now, a federal grand jury in California, they've indicted Joshua Mandel. He is a film production accountant from Woodland Hills, California. He has been charged 6 counts of wire fraud for allegedly embezzling more than $1.9 million from independent film productions that have employed him. And this announcement was made by the Justice Department. Now, 46-year-old Mandel will be making his initial court appearance and will be arraigned on September 10th in U.S. District Court in Los Angeles. So in this indictment, Mandel owned First J Productions. It's a company in Woodland Hills where he acted as both CEO and chief financial officer. He was a production accountant. He managed cash flow, payroll, and expenses for various independent films. I tried to dig into what there was, if we could find out what those films were or who he's worked with. Couldn't really find out much about it. But he had authority also over prepaid debit cards issued by CASHét Card, a common payment tool in the film industry, and access to production companies' bank accounts. So this guy had access to the funds, had access to the bankroll. An accountant you'd think would be above board, but no, I've heard of accountants skimming off the books. That's not, outside of the scope of what could happen. Very nefarious, but it's what the guy did with the money. Okay, it's what the part is. So between 2019 and 2023, it's also during COVID. It's crazy. Misappropriating funds by writing unauthorized checks, making unauthorized wire transfers, and move money into this CASHét Card account. The account was called Fun, which I also found out was one of his production company names as an LLC. Authorities say he used the funds for personal expenses where he was paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to young women, including porn stars, pornographic actresses, and more than $129,000 to a woman he met through a sugar daddy website. Wow. The guy in the 4 years spent $125,000 on a sugar baby. Damn. Some of the expenditures he had was they had $24,000 marked where he was staying at various Las Vegas hotels and clubs, spent more than $12,000 at Louis Vuitton. So obviously it was for a bag or for some other accessories for this girl. I hope the sex was good, buddy. Oh my goodness, man. Josh. To conceal the scheme, prosecutors allege Mandel transferred funds between different production companies to cover up the misuse. So be a Ponzi scheme. Taking money to put it to cover the other. Oh man. And if found guilty on all charges, he could face up to 20 years in prison for each count. That is crazy. So there's an assistant U.S. attorney that's on the case about this. I mean, who comes up with the idea of doing this? Like, this is wild. But he did. And when I look at what the decision was to go ahead and pay for all this, you know, I was amazed by this. He had this extravagant lifestyle, and this was obviously him wanting to go ahead and play a part where he could, if he can't have the money to be the sugar daddy, he made it possible. That's the biggest thing that he did. I'm like, wow, man, what are you doing here? Now, a lot of the stories give the same story that's going on here, but I want to go into the complaint of what's happening here, because there are things going on about this story that we need to go ahead and bring up here about what happened. So the Justice Department put this out here and put the whole story through all this. Now, because of all that's going on here with this particular indictment, there was much more besides this, because there were other cases that were going on in the same case besides this embezzlement case. You also have a case that was filed, a fraud lawsuit, where First Day Productions was filing a lawsuit against a shredding company. So it's trying to go and make money back on a case that might go ahead and help to keep covering up on the case right here. Then there was another case they had where they were being filed a lawsuit, but it was a contractual dispute by WMBTY Entertainment. Has to be a part of this here. But it's the risk that you take. The thing is, what it comes down to is it really worth the risk to go ahead and be a sugar daddy when you are so compelled to become a sugar daddy because you'll just go to this kind of route because you think this is going to be, you know, the fun that you're going to get out of it. It's worth the risk. So that goes into a story that came out about a month ago from Psychology Today about the appeal and the risks of sugar daddy relationships. And college students being brought up into this mix here. So for many college and university students, sugar relationships can be a draw, especially for those struggling financially. 3 million college students, we've talked about this before, in the U.S. are considered so-called sugar babies. They talked to one, Emily, 21-year-old university student, needing extra income, had an interview with the Trauma and Mental Health Report, and describing one of her among experiences with a sugar daddy who was married but not uncommon. And she says her longest arrangement was with a man who was married. His wife and kids did not know. I felt a little weird about it. What's interesting is that we didn't know anything about Joshua and if he was married or what kind of arrangement or what kind of situation he had, you know, if there was a relationship or if he had a marriage or you know, any kids or what his whole situation was. I just wish we knew more about who this sugar baby was and how she got caught up in this. Plus, it must have been multiple girls that he was also spending time with. Plus, he obviously was trying to go ahead and get into the interest of some of the porn stars he was probably working with. So probably doing some adult work as well. For the fact he was able to go ahead and interact with porn stars and taking them out and what they probably got from him to move forward. Because what doesn't help him either is the kind of money he had to spend on these girls. Like, who are the girls he's going after to try to get what he wants from it? Like, he had to spend some significant money. Again, $24,000 on hotels in Vegas. That is not cheap. Who knows how much he spent on gambling? Who knows how much he spent on shows or what anything, if he even got to that point. So now, Emily said she stopped working with a sugar daddy and stopped spending time with him because she felt like things could go wrong. It's risky. You have to be careful. And there's no really way of knowing. You could talk to someone and they can be super nice and they can end up not being genuine. And that's the other thing too, is that with these sugar babies, they probably thought, film accountant, he's such an unassuming guy. He's a CPA. I mean, he probably doesn't get out too much. I mean, who knows what kind of stereotypes you could put into the mix for this guy, and saying, well, he's probably not much of a catch anyway. So like, he's in here in Hollywood. He's surrounded by all these beautiful people, however he feels about it. And he wants to be one of those in people, but he doesn't make the money to go and do that. But he has the access to all these funds. So he thought he could probably get away with it. And as an accountant, he probably could find a way to work the numbers around to fudge them to make it work. And he could probably hide enough money doing what he did in the Ponzi scheme to keep it working. And that's what he thought he could keep doing. But, Ponzi schemes will find a way to stop. Now, Emily in this story here also says there were definitely times I didn't feel good about myself afterwards. I wanted to try to think about it this way. They are paying me for my time, not for what I'm doing. But there were times I would feel kind of used. Sometimes you do things you don't really want to do just for the money, and the regret is definitely a part of it. You'll lose some autonomy. If you aren't paying for your own stuff anymore, it kind of feels like your life isn't yours. Now, we've talked about this before, but I want to make the point here that the risk for the sugar baby, there is a risk for the sugar daddy, because for him, he felt like he had no value. He felt like, well, if I want to get with the kind of girls I want to be with, there wasn't, where he's at, money talks, and where he lives, I mean, in California, Woodland Hills, right outside of Hollywood, I'm sure, he was probably trying to find a way to make himself feel wanted and feel noticed. So he goes into this. The same process, he just feels like, well, these women can be had. They're like the casting couch kind of feel to it. Feels like he could probably find a way to get himself closer to these girls, and the money will do what it needs to do. And the thing is, I would imagine that these women wouldn't have really asked for a lot from him to even go ahead and do that. Because for the matter is, over 4 years, they're going to spend almost $2 million. That's not a hobby. That is obsession. And trying to find time, the time he's probably spending to get together with these girls over 4 years, he probably didn't get that many. How many days could he have gotten to go and spend with these girls in the first place doing what he did? Maybe what? A couple of weekends, maybe amounting to maybe what? A couple of weeks over a 4-year period just to go and get some kind of fun and jollies out of it. And was it just for sex? Because I guess it would imagine to be that, because what else would it be? To live the life, beautiful girl on his side, and, would look like he was out of sorts anyway. Film accountant. Like, I'm just putting everything together, just saying to myself, this guy probably wasn't that big a deal, but he was able to get away with it for 4 years and found a way to do that. And now to spend 20 years in jail for doing this. Like, it's one thing if you don't have the money for it, but to play with other people's money like that too, and to expect the possible 20-year sentence for doing it, it's bad. But that's also the risk that these guys will go through, thinking, well, if there's the fantasy of getting with a girl that he spends time with, that he gets to work around, or that he gets to know from the circles of who he's working with in production companies, and saying, well, he wants to get close to her, but he's nobody. He's not a producer. He's not able to do anything to further her career or have any particular power, but the money gives him a lot of leeway, and that's what he thought he had. So in the story we talked about here, about that many young women get into sugar daddy relationships for the same reasons that prostitutes enter the profession, for money. So for the women that are probably in these production companies, that are probably in these productions that are of movies, they're probably not high level movies. So the salaries they're probably making are not that much. So for somebody to go and act like they're in the business, they're in this production company, he's got this set up production company for himself, has 3 LLCs to his name. Well, let's find a way to go ahead and do something with that. So, he probably did a lot of talk to make him sound like somebody that he wasn't. And he found his way to get over here. So like in the same way the woman talks about, being risks. Yeah. This guy that she's whoever was spending time with Joshua Mandel probably got this whole kind of idea of, well, this guy acts like he's somebody. He's faking it till he can make it. And he's using other people's money. So he found a way to be somebody else. It's like an alter ego. And he's using that to get out there. So, who knows? He has to live like a double life to be able to do this. Unless he was just so good at being like a habitual liar. Again, I am just speculating here, but you have to look at the numbers and just say to yourself, $2 million over 4 years, what he was spending the money on, the significant amount of spending, and then how he had to go and try to cover it up. That is criminal minded. And that was quite a way to be so obsessed to get around these girls. It's not worth it. So women will express the emotions and problems that girls that were labeled prostitutes: shame, guilt, embarrassment, feeling exposed, vulnerable, dirty, anxious, and depressed. But in Hollywood, probably the women that are in some of these industries as well, if they're in porn, they probably feel that way anyway. It feels like prostitution in the first place. So to go into this year, and this guy can just go ahead and like go along and, feel like he can just make this happen. That's crazy. But do you ever think you could ever hear about a story that was going to be about a sugar daddy Ponzi scheme? I mean, that's crazy. And I don't know if there's anything like that's been happened like that before. But it hasn't really happened much out of other places. There have been other stories where sugar babies have made a lot of money off of the men that she was with. So there was a story in April 2024 that talked about this. In Japan, there was a sugar baby that was sent to prison for 9 years for defrauding men out of $1 million and selling them on how to do it. We talked about that here. Mai Watanabe, defrauding men she met on dating apps out of more than $1 million and selling a menu on how to execute similar scams, helping another woman in her efforts. These are extreme cases of sugar babies and sugar daddies. So keep that in mind too. But there's quite a bit of stories about all these kind of things. And then, of course, there's the scams for a sugar daddy that's trying to go ahead and make money off of others. Like the thing is, too, is that there's also those where we get the risks of a sugar daddy scam where one guy in North Carolina, was able to go ahead and get $20,000 off of a woman, claiming to be a sugar daddy off of a sugar daddy website. The Better Business Bureau has talked about numerous reports of scammers offering to be a sugar mama or sugar daddy, and that there's been the scams about scammers sending a target a check or pretending to transfer money into their bank account or into a peer-to-peer service like Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, or Apple Pay, telling the target to keep most of the money as their weekly allowance after they do a small favor, but then asking the target to transfer part of that money out in another way to pay an outstanding bill, buying a gift card, sending money to a needy friend, or even donating to a fake charity. And those scammers have promised hundreds and even thousands of dollars, which is how some victims have been tricked into losing that money. One person that was reported to the BBB lost $19,500. That she ended up sending her own personal money to these contacts, and that's what happened. But it's been going across the country. But it's one of those things that the risks are out there. But it still comes down to the fact that how do you go ahead and let a guy just decide to go and be able to do something like this and just say, okay, this is the plan of it. Now, there is a story that's coming out from the Daily Mail that also brings up a lot to this right here about sugar daddies and sugar babies. Alex Cooper, the host of the Call Her Daddy podcast. Here's an amazing story. This just came out today, even before I even got involved in this, but she, who is now currently the highest earning female podcaster, signed a 3-year, $125 million contract with SiriusXM last year. 8 years ago, she once relied on cash from sugar daddies she met on Seeking Arrangement, which is now Seeking.com, to cover her New York City apartment bills. So she was coming out of Boston University, and Cooper was surviving on unemployment checks after losing her ad sales job at Gotham Magazine, and she turned to sugar daddies for help. She said, quote, "The goal was I never wanted to do anything with these men," she said in her podcast in 2020. "It was just to go get drinks and dinner, and by the end of the night, have enough money for rent." In 2021, she told Time Magazine she had no regrets about sugar dating, quote, "Those hotel moments or whatever, they all taught me something. And yes, of course, the caliber I was doing it, people made me think of it as aspirational, but we all go through our shit." So we're going to keep the show short tonight. That's it. But like I said, stay tuned and stand by for a great episode I have with Tim Ash, the author of Primal Dating. I'll put that interview out for folks to go and check out for yourselves. And it'll help you from being a little less depraved and debaucherous.